Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and today I want to share with you the books and resources for an astronomy unit study for middle school. I do have two other videos to show the books and resources for an astronomy main lesson block that's Waldorf inspired, as well as books and resources for an astronomy study for younger elementary. And I encourage you to check out both of those videos as well, because those videos have different resources. So if you're looking to do something that's in a little bit the middle of all of these different age groups or pedagogies, then I encourage you to check out those other videos, because they'll have specific materials for the Waldorf approach and specific materials for a younger audience. And honestly, when I'm homeschooling, I'm generally homeschooling with multiple ages, and I love including some of the younger resources, primarily picture books for our opening activities, when I am homeschooling multiple ages. So the older children still like those picture books, even when it's really directed for the younger children, and the younger children still like to listen to the lessons of the older children, even though it's really presented for them. Today, I want to share with you the books and resources for a general unit study on astronomy, but these resources are for middle school and even young high school. I think some of these could work for, like, say, 9th grade or 10th grade as well. So the first books I want to share with you are the general overview of astronomy books, and I have a number of them here, but I want to show the new ones first. The Mysteries of the Universe by D.K. is a book that we have used for our current astronomy main lesson block. We've used this as part of our opening activities. It is such a joy to read, but I do encourage you to check back at the end of this unit or main lesson block to see the review video for these materials, because all of the materials that I'm sharing with you today, some of them we've used, some of them we haven't used. And since we are in the middle of our unit at the moment, if you come back at the end, then you can see how well we liked these resources. I can tell you more about the resources, whether they helped our main lesson block, whether they're ones that we decide not to use, whether they're ones that we actually don't recommend. So I encourage you to check back at the end. However, since we have already started our main lesson block for astronomy, and since we did manage to complete this book in about a week or so, I can tell you that this is definitely a book that I would highly recommend. The illustrations and the photography are stunning. They are so enjoyable to look at. And what I love about this book, it's a really big book. It's quite hefty, and yet it's a quick read, because every page is no more than a few paragraphs, and the paragraphs, it's very quick, like maybe a minute or two to read the pages, maybe a minute to read and a few more minutes for a discussion. We really enjoyed going through this book, and it slowly takes you starting from Earth and your solar system to everything beyond. Really enjoyed it so much, especially for both the illustrations and the photography. And so while I think it's a little bit hard to see just because of the way that it's presented, that some of these are actually photographs. Like, this is a really famous photograph that you're going to see in some of the other resources that we have, but the way that it's presented almost makes it look like an illustration. So this is definitely a book that I would highly recommend. It does give you a general overview, but it's not really something that I would be able to use as a lesson. So I have this as part of our opening activities. Since we're using our resources within a main lesson block, which is a Waldorf approach, we're using some of these resources that would otherwise be used in a unit study within our main lesson block as part of our opening activities, rather than as content for our lessons. If you wanted to use this as content for your lessons or have it be the spine for your unit study, you would definitely need other resources to complement this. It's just not enough information to put together the lessons, but it is so inspiring and so beautiful. Another book that is equally stunning in its presentation is Planetarium. This is the Welcome to the Museum series. These books are really large, and it's fine that they're large. However, sometimes the fact that they're so big actually makes it a little bit difficult to use. Just in holding the book, I find that it's a bit more cumbersome than some of the other books. Thankfully, it's not too heavy. There are some other books that I have that are actually even heavier. And the other thing is that, as stunning as this book is, it's also, in my opinion, not one that can be a standalone for a unit study. This can be a really great spine to keep you going in a particular direction for your lessons, but I definitely do think that you need more materials to complement the content in this book. We have used these books in our other lessons. We've had them especially for our botany main lesson block and for our ocean main lesson block. And in those cases as well, the illustrations have been stunning. They often end up being illustration inspiration for our unit. We recently finished an anatomy unit where the anatomy book by Welcome to the Museum ended up being our illustration inspiration for maybe half of our lessons, which is quite a lot. But the content itself, as much as it was enjoyable, and it gives you a great overview of that particular topic area, I find that personally for me, when I'm presenting lessons, I do need other resources. But this is just a really beautiful presentation. I love how the illustrations just sort of captivate you, and the imagination for astronomy is so strong. We do have a lot of that just in popular culture as it is, but having illustrations that can also just allow your mind just to start to wander and imagine what things might be like in other solar systems and other galaxies and what it might have been like billions of years ago is a plus for me. I love including that. Okay, so let's move on because I could look at this book all day long. Another book that's new for us, but here's one that's really hefty and just is cumbersome to hold. Even though it's smaller, it is so heavy. This is by DK. This is called Cosmos, Explore the Wonders of the Universe, is by Smithsonian. And this is a beautiful book. The reason why I bought this book, because I do have quite a few resources that are general when it comes to astronomy. But the main reason why I bought this book, two reasons I should say. One is for the photographs. A lot of times I prefer books that have illustrations, and this one has a lot of photographs, which I think is really important at this stage in my daughter's education. So my daughter is 14. She is in 8th grade for conventional schooling. She is going into 9th grade. But this year, when she was 13 and 14, this was a 7th grade year for us. So she was doing 7th grade and 8th grade work. And then moving into 9th grade, she'll be doing 8th grade and 9th grade work. And so for that reason, I felt like we needed things that had more photographs rather than illustrations. I still love including visuals in our education for sure. That's something that's just going to be powerful in its presentation regardless of the age. But at this point, I felt like we needed a little bit more of the photographs versus the illustrations, even though I can't let go of some of these books that are just so beautifully illustrated. Also, when it comes to the sciences, and maybe less so astronomy, but at the same time, I think even more so astronomy, is that some of the books and resources that I have that you will see are also quite old. And I don't mind using vintage books at all, things that we had early on in our homeschooling, and also things that I just buy secondhand. However, you do need to be mindful that, especially in astronomy nowadays, where we have explorers that have like say the Mars Explorer or the Voyager. And I apologize, I don't remember all the names of the different explorers that have gone out, but we have amazing photographs of the planets. We have more recently the photographs of Pluto, some of the highest quality photographs that we've ever had. Some of the books that I have are so old, those Voyagers they hadn't even been launched yet. And so when some of that content is dated because we do have new information. The other thing, which I think is really interesting, is that because of our telescopes and because of the technology and the ability, especially with modern technology, to be able to take so many photographs of the sky, we have an abundance of data that now needs to be processed. And this has opened up the opportunity for citizen scientists to help process that data. And so now that we have so much data, we are discovering things that we may have known existed, but we never had a photograph of before, or more information is coming out about these things that we didn't know before. And so that's really thrilling. And so I feel like this book, and I did not check the publication date, but this is a new book for us. And let's just check that real quick. This is 2024, and I'm recording this currently in 2025. And so this is probably one of our the newest resource, I apologize, the newest resource that we have. I have some books from like the early 1990s. And so we're looking at 35 years of progress and discovery in that time. So this book is one that if I were just using this book, I feel like it would have enough information. It's broad and deep enough to be the main resource for an astronomy unit study. If I were going through this book and I was only using this book, I would definitely pick and choose the lessons. It is just so dense that I don't think that we would be able to get through this book in a reasonable amount of time. So I would pick and choose the lessons and the selections that I wanted to use if it was just for unit study. The way that we plan to use this as part of our Waldorf-inspired main lesson block on astronomy is for a few reasons. One, the pictures of the planets is something that I think that is of interest for my daughter and for myself, especially the moons around Jupiter and Saturn. Those are really interesting for us to explore. And so those are the passages that I would read. I am looking for a single book on each of the planets. I have about half of the planets so far. And until I can find or source those books, and granted some of them are a little bit old, I think that this is going to be a really great resource to have a little bit more depth on each of the planets, because the other resources that I have are a little bit scant in that perspective. These images are just absolutely stunning. Like I could just completely be absorbed in a book like this. And this is what I'd hope for my daughter too, is that if this is almost like a coffee table book, that it would just prompt us just to look and just get lost in the wonder of the universe. Also, as part of our astronomy main lesson block, we are including a chalk drawing, probably several chalk drawings. And the first chalk drawing that we have up is on the Mars rover and the landscape of Mars with Olympus Mons in the background and both moons in the sky. And so this will be another really interesting passage to learn more about, because some of the other books that I have on Mars or other resources was before the rover landing. So that will be exciting to see some of the information and the data that was collected on that. Okay, so this is called Cosmos. Really beautiful book, really heavy. Sometimes heavy books like that make it a little bit difficult to hold and read in a comfortable way. I have a few more books that are a great overview if you're looking for something that's just going to give you a general overview of astronomy. This one's called Space, the definitive visual catalog of the universe with hundreds of the latest, most extraordinary images. This is by Scholastic. And indeed, in here, I remember seeing the same image of Saturn. Here it is, a really famous photograph of Saturn. And so this is another book that if you wanted a book that had more photographs and more up to date, and it's questionable because I have to see when this book was published, but up to date visuals, then this would be a really great resource. Plus, this is, I think, more of the middle school level. This is 2018, so I think this is suitable. It's still been about 7 years at this point, but I think it's still a suitable resource. And this one, it's so much lighter. I think it's more for a upper elementary, like middle school age level. And so this would be a really great resource as well. Something like this, again, would be something that I would use to support whatever curriculum that I was using. And I would just choose certain selections from the book. This is not a book that I would read cover to cover. This is a really old book. Let me check the publication date. I think that's important at this point. This is 1999. This book is called The Universe, More Than 100 Questions and Answers to Things You Want to Know. This is one of the original books from our homeschool library. I have another one here as well. Some of the very first books I ever purchased for our homeschooling, which we began homeschooling in 2003. And my oldest was born in the late 1990s. And so this is one of the very first books that we had in our home. It's lovely. I love the illustrations. I don't like this format of book. I think a lot of people might enjoy this, but I don't particularly like the question answer format. While certain questions are chosen specifically in order to move the book along, I personally don't like that kind of writing style very much. But if you do, then this would be a really great book for you, or something similar to it, because I'm not sure that it's easily accessible, but the idea of it being interactive in that way where it's question answer, because when you're asking a question, it sort of allows the student to kind of take a moment and ponder and try to think about what might be the answer, then this might be enjoyable. The other thing that this book didn't really provide enough for me was enough content. So for me as the teacher, I generally want more content and more background than what I'm actually presenting to my students. It makes me feel confident about what I'm presenting, and it allows me to have the information in case my students do ask a question. If I only know the surface amount, then I don't feel like I can have a good connection with the information, and I don't feel like I can support questions if they do come up. Let's move on to the Usborne internet linked book of astronomy and space. Any of the internet linked books, I've never actually used that function for the book. Let me just show you where that might be. So you know what? I actually don't know if this publisher is still in business. I'm not sure, but if it is, you go to usborne-quicklinks.com and you enter astronomy, and then it will link up to whatever resources are on the website. But I actually don't know if that's still available. And let me also find the publication date for this book. So it's 2001, which makes it quite dated compared to the other resources that I have. And I'm not even sure that this is still in publication. So what's nice about this book, if you do have it or you can find it, for me, is I like the way that it's presented as far as like the illustrations. It does include a little bit of photographs as well. And this one does have a bit more information than some of the other resources that I have, but this is intended, in my opinion, for elementary and middle school. So some of the other resources where I think there's not enough, I feel there's not enough based on who I think the audience of the book is. So if it's one of the other books that, like for instance, this kind of book, I feel like the audience is older, but I could be wrong. And so I'm expecting more robust information, which of course it still is really good, but as a standalone for a main lesson or a unit study, I feel like it needs more. This one, however, for the grade or age level that the audience is for a book like this, I feel like it's a good amount. I do like the illustrations. I feel like it does have that same feel of like getting you just carried away in your imagination about the solar system, about the universe, about space in general. And then the other thing that might be a good thing, because I don't know that it's being published anymore, is that you might be able to find it secondhand for a really good price, and then that way you can just have it as an additional resource. If you are buying things for the first time, like you are approaching this unit for the very first time, I don't recommend buying something that is outdated if you have an opportunity to buy something that is more recently published. However, they don't make illustrations like this anymore. The illustrations I'm seeing more are like these kinds of illustrations that you're going to see a lot in this book, as well as the illustrations that you can see in this DK book. And I do like these as well, for sure. They're not always my favorite, but that is the style of illustration that you're going to see a lot more of these days. So if you like a little bit more, I'm going to call this old school illustration, and of course some of them are actual photographs, then this might be a good choice for you. This set of books here These books are the kinds of books that you can easily find at the library. A lot of these I actually purchased from library bookstores. And I am looking for a book on every planet and, of course, on the sun and the moon. I just wanted a single resource. The reason why I wanted a single resource on each of the planets and the moon and the sun is that when you have a single resource, the chances of you having more depth in that subject are going to be greater than when you're using a book that is talking about all the planets, for instance. So when I really want to learn about Mars, having a book like this, I'm going to get far more information, depth and broadness of information, versus a book that, even if it's for an older audience, is probably not going to give as many details. And of course, you get so many beautiful illustrations and photographs. So this one is called The Mystery of Mars by Scholastic, and I guess I picked this one up for 50 cents, and it used to be in a teacher's school library, a classroom library. This one is called Neptune. I believe this is the one that was published in 1993, and it did talk about Pluto. And again, looking for books that are going to be single subject areas for astronomy. If it's of interest for you, you're going to find a lot more content. We also have Saturn, another one that used to be at the library. And this one is, again, I would classify this as middle school content with a mix of illustrations and photographs. And the way that we would use these books is that I would use them as part of our opening activities. So they wouldn't be the lesson themselves. They would support the lesson in a way, but they would be part of the opening of our school day. And in that way, we can do anything in our opening activities. It doesn't have to actually relate to the main lesson block at hand. But this is how I use a lot of these resources. Now, when we are doing our Waldorf approach, we're not really diving deep into each of the planets. We're looking at the observable sky and the constellations, the moon, the sun, the planets that we can see easily or with a telescope, and planetary motion, possibly things like aurora borealis or an eclipse, maybe meteor showers or comets if that's something that's current, but we're not going to go in depth about each of the planets. So when I'm using these books, it's not part of, like, say, the Waldorf approach, and we typically do a Waldorf inspired approach. I will use these as part of our opening activities, in which case you can do just about anything. And learning about not just the planets, but the moons around the planets has been of deep interest for my daughter. We also have Discovering Jupiter. This is also by Scholastic, The Amazing Collision in Space. And this is a very robust book with a lot of information. Let me check the publication date on this, because 1995. So this is 30 years old. Another one by Scholastic is a book about planets and stars. And honestly, this was such an amazing resource. I know that it is also dated. This is also from a teacher's classroom. And this book is 1988. This one is so old, but I found this one to be like so helpful for us. Let's see. That's just a note to myself to do an experiment. I was thinking maybe I put a correction of information there, but I didn't. Okay, so for books like these, the reason why I like them is that you can tell that especially the publisher Scholastic is definitely written for students. And so I like that, because it's like you're getting a textbook, but you're getting a book itself. And so I still personally really like the way that it's presented and the way that it's written. If it feels too much like a textbook for you and not like in line with the Charlotte Mason Living Book approach, then I would suggest a different resource. But I personally have really liked these kinds of books, and especially Mars, as that is our first illustration on our chalkboard. This one, I like that illustration, or that photograph. We also have The Sun, and this is by Barron's, in the window on the universe. You can just tell these books are a little bit more dated, and this one is from This is a used book that I got secondhand. This is 1993. A lot of the books that are older and secondhand that I didn't specifically buy, like I wasn't looking for, that I just came upon, I'm usually getting from the library bookstore. I will browse the library bookstore whenever we go to the library, and I have mentally a list of the books that I'm always looking for. So anything that's going to support any of the main lesson blocks or unit studies that we have done or that I anticipate doing, I'll pick up. If I won't pick up books that are written at a third grade level or below. I will only pick them up if they have more robust information. If they're written as like a young reader, I won't pick it up. If they are in astronomy or history or any of the sciences, math especially, because those are harder to find, then they're going to go in my basket if they look interesting to me and they are things that I think that we will end up using. Granted, we're coming to the tail end of our homeschooling journey, and yet still, if it's something that I think would support one of our units or main lesson blocks, as I hope that there will still be something in the future for me in the educational world, then I'll still pick it up. This book is on the Earth. So this book takes you from like the beginning, like the formation of the planet, and then a little bit on the geology of the planet. So if you were doing a geology unit, then this would, or I would recommend maybe doing an earth science, geology, or mineralogy unit prior to starting your astronomy unit, because this will give you a good idea of the Earth and the formation of the planet and the different cycles, like the rock cycle or the water cycle, those kinds of things in preparation for astronomy. So this book can go with earth science, and I've put it here with astronomy so that at least we have one book. As we talk about all the planets, we have one book on the Earth. And then this one is called Faraway Worlds, and I believe I got this one the last time we were doing our main lesson block on astronomy. It didn't quite support it the way that I thought. It was still very interesting to read, but it wasn't quite what I was hoping for. So this kind of book would probably go really great with maybe exploration and exploring, beyond our planet, just because it has more of that feel, even though the idea of visiting any star beyond our solar system is not possible in our lifetime, or really at all, unless we find some miraculous way to travel in space. This is just not going to be possible. So the best that we have right now is our extremely powerful telescopes in space for us to be able to see and imagine what's out there. Okay, with exploration, I have Robot Explorers. I apologize. This is by Scholastic. Now, this is not really my area of interest, and so I haven't ever dedicated enough time within our main lesson block or unit studies to explore the exploration of anything beyond our planet. So that would be just space exploration and other planets or to the moon. If that is something that interests you or your student, then these books might be a good addition. I would suggest doing this as its own little mini unit study within a larger unit study, or a unit study within a main lesson block, so that you can explore some of these concepts, some of these discoveries, and these books. DK Eyewitness, Space Exploration. This is another book that, again, we haven't used as extensively. The DK Eyewitness books, I have mixed feelings about. Sometimes I really love them. They support our unit very well. Other times I'm not as interested in them. They do provide photographs over illustrations. There are sometimes some illustrations, but for the most part, they provide photographs, which is really great because I personally gravitate towards books with illustrations, and so complementing those books with books that actually have photographs I think is really important, so that this could be a really good resource for you if you're looking for something that's like this on space exploration and you're looking for some photographs, because this is definitely something that you can have, that we have access to, versus imagining the planets beyond our solar system and we know generally about them, but an illustration is going to be the form of the kind of image you're going to have. In addition to space exploration, I have two projects. This is called Metal Earth, and one is Apollo CSM with LM, and this one is Insight Mars Lander. These are metal replicas. So you're assembling them with metal. So a lot of the kits that we have tend to be like wood or plaster, brick, things like that. We have this one here, which is made from metal. So it does end up being, it is a challenge because they're fine pieces. You do need to be a little bit careful because they can be sharp, and it takes a lot of work to actually assemble them. A lot of the projects that we have tend to be for elementary school. Both of these are for ages 14 and up. So unless your child has already had experience putting these or doing projects like this, then I would just spend a little more time or help your child out, or just forego this for another project. And if your child is really into these projects, the final result is stunning. So there are others, but these are the two that we have that support our astronomy unit. To be honest, I'm not sure that my 14-year-old daughter is going to be interested in doing these. We will kind of gauge that as we work through our main lesson block. Also, this has more to do with the things, like for instance, the Mars lander. So this, how should I say this? We're not really studying this. And so this might not be as applicable versus if you were actually doing a mini unit on space exploration, then this would be a great hands-on project to complement that. If you're looking for other hands-on projects, I have a few things that might be helpful. This is the History of Space Travel puzzle, and this would also be really great for space exploration. And if your students or you yourself like puzzles, this one was a really beautiful one. We've already completed it with our last astronomy unit, main lesson block, and we've already put it away. It did come with a poster though, so that was nice to see the completed poster. And if you would like other hands-on projects, I have a couple more to share with you. And if you're looking for more hands-on projects for younger students, I also have those in the video for putting together an astronomy unit study for elementary. One that I think is good for all ages is the Professor Noggins games. This is for outer space. They have been going through and updating all of their Professor Noggins games. This is the older one. I don't know if the astronomy one has been updated yet or not. That would be a great one to see if it's updated, because I've noticed that they haven't just changed the illustrations to photographs on the front. They've also changed the questions. They're now in this orientation, and I do believe that the questions themselves have been updated. So the way we play this, it does come with the dice. We never play it with the dice. What we do is we'll divide up maybe 3 to 5 cards, generally about 5 cards each. We don't play the whole deck. And then we will just ask each other. Right now, we're just playing with 2. If we're playing with more, then each person would be asking the next person around. And we just ask the question, and then if the question is answered correctly, that person keeps the card. And at the end, we just tally up and see who got the most cards. It's a very quick activity if you're just doing a few cards each. We love to include these into our opening activities. It's a great way just to kind of have a fun game to get going into the main lesson block. Another game that we have, this one's super old, but it is so fun to play. So we've been playing it every day for this main lesson block. It's called Destination Mars. We have a small obsession with Mars at the moment. This game is so old that it still includes Pluto. I don't know if this game is still available. I'm sure that there are others that would be just as enjoyable. You have your cards, you try to make groups or connections, and then you move your little spaceship from launch to land. So this is a fun game. It's not like super informative or educational. Unless you really didn't know about the planets, then this would at least help you know the inner planets and the outer planets. But overall, it's just a fun game. It's competitive, so it's a fun way to introduce the lesson. It's a great opening activity, but it is only for 2 players. And so at the moment, since I'm only homeschooling my one child, this works out really great. If you want to make your own trivia cards rather than getting the Professor Noggins games, you can certainly make them. This game, how we made it, is already part of the astronomy playlist. You can find that link in the description box below, where you can find all of the projects that we've done with astronomy and all of the books and resources that we're using for elementary, middle school, and for Waldorf main lesson block. So these cards are watercolored on watercolor paper. They measure about 4.5 inches by 6 inches. I watercolored on the front, and then I wrote questions with answers on the back. So it's either like a true-false question, a multiple choice question, or a fill in the blank. And then we laminated them. So I made a set and my child made a set as well. And then we can test each other. So we try to get questions that are going to be challenging enough to make the game enjoyable. I also purchased this hands-on project the last time we did an astronomy unit. This one is the weather station. Actually, it's by Play Steam. This is Space Weather Station. Actually, this is the booklet that tells you how to assemble it and a little bit about it, but I don't have the container, the box that it came in, because we have since assembled it. We have assembled it, we have used it, we have disassembled it, or, stored it. And then just recently we added our soil and our seeds to it again. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can see 2 seeds here that have sprouted. We did wheat berries. And I think there's maybe even a couple other things in there that I don't recognize. So it has the thermometer, it has the compass. These are supposed to mimic the solar panels, and then wind, direction. So this is something that can work with a geology unit or a mineralogy unit or science unit, as well as a space unit, if we're looking at how to support life in space long term, if that was, that's going to be necessary if you want to explore space. So this was a fun project. It was okay. I don't feel like it was so educational, but at the same time, we probably didn't utilize the book as much to support this project. And if you did, there probably could be more to help make it more of an educational experience. I have just 2 more things to share with you. I've previously shared the constellation cards by Hatching Curiosity. It didn't come in a box, but this box is so beautiful, and it comes with something that I think would support this age group. This supports a younger age group. Well, it supports all age groups, but I already shared it with our Waldorf approach to this main lesson block, because the constellations are really a big part of it. And I think that for the younger grades, it's also a really great thing to go out and observe the night sky and the stars. But if you want to have a better understanding of the distance between the planets and their size, a proportion of their size, this ribbon is probably one of the coolest things that I've seen. Let me take you to the very beginning. So the sun is too large for this ribbon, so you're only going to see a portion of it. Then you're going to see Mercury, Venus, Earth, and then a bit more of a distance you see Mars. And you can see that they are so tiny. But then you go and you find Jupiter way over here, and you can see that it is quite large. Then you keep going and you can see Saturn. Then you have to go quite a long way before you get to Uranus, and then quite a long way before you get to Neptune. And of course, Pluto is not shown on this because this is a more recent resource. And so Pluto is not on it. But this gives you a good idea. It's more than 6 feet long, if I remember. And it gives you a good idea of just how far some of these outer planets are. I hope that you enjoyed this look at the materials that we're using for our astronomy unit study for middle school. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video for more information, as well as links to all of the resources you see here today. The link to that blog post is in the description box below. And if you'd like to see how we're homeschooling on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram and now on TikTok at Pepper and Pine.